said, by no means do I think it's an awful movie. And I do enjoy it very much, and I do own it. But it's, in my opinion, it's his weakest one because it doesn't connect on an emotional level, at least with me. And I love dogs.
Do you consider Wes Anderson to be somebody on a par with like Chris Nolan, where you think he hasn't made a bad film yet?
I would absolutely say yes. I think he's on par with, you know, he's got a perfect batting average. I don't think he's made a bad film. He hasn't made a film that I haven't enjoyed. You and I know how much I hate Death Proof, so that's sort of like the Tarantino. I don't think Tarantino has a perfect batting average because of Death Proof.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there are degrees to the Wes Anderson movies, much like Nolan movies, where I like this movie much better than I do this one.
Uh-huh.
Or, you know, I think that this is the weakest of them, and I think that this is probably his best. But yeah, I would say that he's a filmmaker that has got a pretty solid batting average. What about you? Where do you stand on that argument?
Yeah, I would agree. I think, like I was saying at the top of the show, it took me a while to really the light bulb to come on for me as far as what he was doing, I guess, with his movies. But once I feel like after Fantastic Mr. Fox, I was like, okay, like I get it now, you know. And then obviously, you know, Moonrise came after that, and I just kind of, I guess I was a late bloomer on the Wes Anderson train, I guess you could say. But
well, like you said, maybe it had to do with age too.
Uh-huh.
You know, you weren't quite as old enough to really get into them until, you know, obviously when you saw Fantastic Mr. Fox, you were, you know, in your early 20s or just about.
Uh-huh.
So then you can start having that appreciation for him. And was there anything that you went back and watched again? I mean, besides Tenenbaums?
Bottle Rocket. I would say everything. Life Aquatic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I kind of dove back into his filmography and I guess found a new appreciation for his work overall, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
As a filmmaker.
I think he's like one of the more unique filmmakers out there. Someone that very much is. I'll definitely go and see the movie no matter what. If he is directing it,
like an auteur of our generation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he's, you know, someone who has his own personal stamp on all of his films. Someone who will get me to go and see the movie no matter what. And, you know, I can't say that about everyone, certain directors, of course, but sometimes it's just like, oh, you know what? I'm not going to watch that movie because it doesn't look all that great. I don't really care. And I can't say that about Wes Anderson. So let's, you know, it brings us to the end of the film, or the climax, I should say. And the climax is the wedding between Ethelwyn and Henry. And they're getting ready, and Ethelwyn is getting ready with Margot. And Margot has stopped smoking. She has the nicotine inhaler. And when Ethelwyn asks her if it's working, she says, not really. And then there's a great little scene with Henry and his son. And then, you know, Richie and Chaz join the two of them. And there's that bonding moment between Chaz and Henry because there was always kind of a coldness between the two of them as well. That, you know, Chaz didn't really want to accept him as, you know, someone who could be marrying his mom. He didn't want to call him Henry. He said he wasn't that close to him. He only knew him as the accountant and not as, you know, Ethelwyn's suitor. But there's that bonding moment because both Henry and Chaz are widowers. And then you hear the screeching of the car coming down the road, and everyone looks out, and it's Eli coming bombing down the avenue, you know, high on whatever he's on. mescaline.
Mescaline, I believe.
With his face all painted up.
Yeah.
You know, he's headed towards the house, and Royal looks down and sees, you know, Ari and Uzi and Buckley are standing outside of the house, and he runs down, and then you hear the crash, and you see the house kind of shake, and realize that Eli crashed into the house. And they check, and, you know, Chaz immediately freaks out and runs down because he's worried about his kids, and Royal, luckily, had saved the children and pushed them out of the way. Unfortunately, Buckley lost his life. The poor, cute little beagle.
Yeah, I wondered, was that like, that Buckley was never meant to make it out of the plane crash, so it was like the universe, like, taking him?
Like Final Destination?
Yeah, something like that. Because it's like, what a freak accident. You imagine being this puppy and you fucking survive this incredible catastrophe only to be ran over by a fucking car by the neighbor, like, so many years later, you know? Like, what? Yeah. It's nuts. But going back to the story, that's Royal's kind of ultimate redemption, where he saves Arya and Uzi, and I feel like the mood changes as far as the family's kind of how they treat their father from then on.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And there's, you know, Royal knowing that that Buckley didn't survive, you know, he's talking to the fireman, and he's asking about the Dalmatian and everything, and then he brings the Dalmatian over to Chaz and says, hey, you know, I got the dog, and, you know, Chaz is, you know, bends down to pet the dog, and then you can see that Chaz is really emotional, and he says, you know, I've had a tough year, Dad. And Royal says, I know, and that's kind of where the two of them, you know, make up. Mm-hmm. There's also, like, a funny little... There's a nice tracking shot where it kind of follows, you know, the aftermath of the accident. It kind of checks in with each character during the aftermath. And the cop recognizes Eli as, you know, the author, and Eli's really flattered by that.
He's like, oh yeah, I love your work. Like, he's just not... The cop is, like, not fazed by what he just did at all.
Yeah. Bill Murray's asking about is there, you know, an alternate? He's asking the priest if there's an alternate because the priest is hurt in the scuffle. We see Richie being looked at by the fake doctor. He got accidentally hit in the eye by Chaz when Chaz was furious at Eli for crashing the car and nearly killing his children.
Yeah, there's this huge kind of chase scene through the house, and Chaz kind of assaults the priest that's in there, right?
Yeah, he's trying to get out of the way, but the priest is at the top of the stairs, and Chaz is trying to get down the stairs to chase after Eli. So the priest kind of gets pushed down the stairs by mistake,
and you just see him falling down. It looks so brutal. He's just sliding down the stairs.
Slides all the way down the stairs.
Oh.
And he chases him outside, and then, you know, as he's trying to beat up Eli, Richie tries to intervene and kind of catches an elbow or a fist, or, you know, or Chaz instinctively turns around and hits him in the eye.
I think it's an elbow in the eye.
And then in the aftermath, you see the fake doctor. You see Dusty, the other elevator operator at the hotel. Mm-hmm. You see him looking at the eye and giving Richie medical advice. That guy should have been like a fraud. Should have been a known fraud. And he's still out there giving Richie advice. And the advice is hilarious because it's, you know, let me know if it spreads to the other eye. It's like a black eye. It's basically a black eye, and he's telling him, you know, let me know if it spreads to the other eye. But it's a nice little tracking shot that kind of checks in with each character. And at the very end of that is Royal and Chaz, you know, making up with each other. And it's that's kind of where, like, the emotion stuff starts for me.
Uh-huh.
Is, you know, they have that reconciliation, and then it's the epilogue, and Alec Baldwin takes us through, you know, where each character kind of goes, and Margot writes a new play that makes reference. It's basically a play that's based on their lives, because the guy there introduced the daughter as the adopted daughter.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and everyone's watching it. It gets mixed reviews. It runs for just a couple of weeks. Raleigh, we mentioned this before, but Raleigh has the book on Dudley, which is another one of my favorite lines, where the reporter at the press conference asks if Dudley can tell time, and Bill Murray just laughs and goes, "Oh Lord, no." And then you see Chaz is the one that's hanging out with him. You know, Chaz and the Royal and the kids are all hanging out and having a good time, and you know, he gets to spend that time with his father that he never got, that it was always Richie getting. And then that's when you find out that, you know, Royal had a heart attack at the age of 68. Chaz rides with him in the ambulance and was the only witness to his father's death. And there's that scene in the ambulance where he's looking down at Royal, and you can tell that he's just really, really sad by, you know, the turn of events. He's, for someone that he hated for so long, you know, they had that reconciliation. They had that time together where they got to spend time as father and son again. And Chaz is just heartbroken by the loss of Royal. And that's all in his face, in Stiller's face, when he's riding in that ambulance. And that's, like I said, that kind of where they have that reconciliation on the street after the accident, and everything through the epilogue, and especially that scene at the end with Royal passing, or at least in the ambulance just before he has the passes, where I start to get emotional, is that whole sequence. And like I said, not because I have any kind of weird issues with my late father, but it was just seeing that bond that they developed, and seeing how Royal, after being such a shit for their entire lives, and you know, for the duration of this film, seeing him make those amends with his family and get back into their lives. So and then we see his funeral, and how he had his wishes about how it should happen at dusk. He had the crazy epitaph on the headstone.
Oh, can I read it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so it's Royal O'Reilly Tenenbaum, 1932 to 2001, died tragically rescuing his family from the wreckage of a destroyed, sinking battleship.
He wanted Etheline to proofread that, and she said that she would, and I don't think that she ever got around to it. Because even the priest, like when he walks by and looks at it, he kind of furrows his brow because something's not right. So he has his funeral. The Chaz and Ari and Uzi now are in the black tracksuits, which was a nice touch. And then they have the little, gun, I want to say 21 gun salute, but not really. But they fire off the
BB guns.
The BB guns, their rifles, in honor of Royal. And then there's just a beautiful, typical Anderson shot where the motion slows down, and you see everyone walking out of the plot in slow motion. And then at the very end, Pagoda closes the gate, and it says Tenenbaum on it. And that's the end of the film. And there's that great song by Van Morrison that plays over the credits. But, man, I love this movie. It's a movie I've watched, God, I don't know. I saw it a bunch of times in the theater.